Hello, everyone. Welcome to my first podcast ever. I hope I don't screw this up. My goal for this podcast is to share the knowledge I've acquired over the years playing Whisperknife. Now, I've played nothing but Whisperknife since beta. I don't know any other classes, and I don't want to know any other classes. Now, one of the reasons that this is that I play Whisperknife the way I enjoy playing it and the way I believe it should be played, and I have very little concern over my overall DPS not matching some other guy who's using some overblown skill until it gets nerfed. I mean, I just play the class the way I believe it's meant to be played, and I hope I can share this knowledge to everyone else, and hopefully they see what I see. So, the first thing that I want to do is I want to set the record straight. I make no claim to be the top DPSing Whisper Knife in the game. In order to reach those heights, you have to do things that I'm not willing to do, including things like using hack skills like Smoke Bomb Shadow Op, or using movement speed to run ahead of everyone else so that you can kill things before anyone else can, possibly even using macros. I mean, there's all kinds of things that you can do to quote unquote improve your damage, but there are things that I'm not interested in because at the end of the day, I want to play Whisperknife the way that I believe that it was meant to be played, and I enjoy playing Whisperknife the way I play it. And I have no desire to instantly kill 6 or 7 mobs by pressing one button. It just bores the crap out of me. So, yes, I'm not the top damage dealer because I refuse to play the way that you need to be to output that kind of damage. Now, the second thing I would want to point out is that I think that that type of play is selfish, and I think that it doesn't really accomplish anything. It doesn't make the dungeon complete any better or any faster by using all these things. There's usually always mechanics involved to complete a dungeon. And if you can't play properly, then no matter how much damage you do, you're not going to complete the dungeon. So my primary goal here is not to top paying giver charts, it's to complete dungeons. Now, I do want to give a little bit of a wake up call to some of you guys that play that way, that A, using movement speed bonuses, all the things you can run faster, it's not going to complete the dungeon any faster. You still got to stop at the bosses, redo the bosses. So it's not like running the frost dungeon, whatever it is, where you just run ahead to the boss, kill the boss, run to the next boss. It doesn't really work that way in harder dungeons. Movement speed accomplishes very little. It doesn't make the dungeon go any faster. Yes, it does make you get to the mobs faster so that you can kill them before anyone else, and it helps you top paying giver charts, but that at the end of the day is not important to me. And the second thing I want to point out is you're not doing the group any favors by killing all the mobs ahead of anyone else, because now none of your other DPS get the opportunity to add to their action points, and your tanks and your healers probably don't get the opportunity to build a divinity because you're just running ahead and killing everything with overblown skills so that you're taking all the credit. And that's just selfish, to be quite honest with you. So, simply put, the best way to be a good damage dealer is to just learn your class, learn the skills, learn how to optimize, and get the best damage out of your skills. And don't try to be so much better than everyone else by using hack skills and stuff. Because at the end of the day, they're going to get nerfed eventually. And when they do, those people that are reliant on those things are going to be lost and they're not going to know what to do properly. Now, if you want to learn how to play Whisperknife properly, stay tuned to the video, and we're going to go through that. But if you disagree with what I'm saying, and you aspire to just use hacks and top everyone by 500 million by the end of a dungeon or whatever, then feel free to give me that thumbs down and feel free to exit stage right, because I'm not here to listen to how you think the game should be played. I don't agree with you, simply put. So we're going to give you 5 seconds to log out and be gone. All right, so hopefully the only people that are left are people that aspire to learn Whisperknife and to play it properly. So if you're still here and you haven't exited already, you must be somewhat interested in learning about Whisperknife and what it offers without all the hacks and the quick cheats and the superpower overblown stuff. And I want to give you a thumbs up for that, because you guys are the guys that I'm looking to find and influence and help develop your characters. So before we get into all the powers and counters and all the stuff that you guys are diligently probably waiting for, I think we need to establish, what is your profile? What are your goals? What are you trying to do? Are you trying to top DPS charts? Are you trying to be single target? Are you looking to be ranged? Are you looking at DPS close? I mean, what type of damage dealer are you trying to be? That's what your profile is. So for me, my profile starts with the fact that I'm really not that concerned about mobs. They're not that important. I am more focused on the really harder mobs and the single target, and like in the case of MLMD, the summoners and those type of hard to kill things. Those are the things that I'm looking after. So you can start by assuming that my profile is focused mostly on single target. I do have Blitz, which is a AoE power, and there's reasons I use Blitz, which I'll get to, but it does help me to classify myself as a hybrid with single target focus. I am also a range DPS. I do not pick any powers that require me to be close to the boss. I don't mind being close to the boss. There's fights where you actually have to be close to the boss. But I like having the range flex and the option to not have to be close to the boss or whatever the mobs are that need to be focused on, like the summoners. And I prefer having that option. So you can classify my profile then as a ranged hybrid focus single target rogue. And you'll see that all my powers and my selections are based on my profile. And if this profile doesn't really fit your profile, you can swap out certain optional encounters for something that's more in your profile. So you're going to find that I believe that there's certain encounters that you should never substitute out. And then there's like the third encounter, as an example, is completely optional. I use Blitz. A single target person might use a lashing blade. An AoE might use a smoke bomb or something. But that particular encounter is totally optional. And that's part of your profile. Okay, so now you understand what my profile is, and I'm hoping maybe you have an idea what your profile is. That when we get into all the powers and all the choices that you have, you'll A, understand why I pick what I pick, and B, be able to adapt if my powers of choice are not suitable to you. You can use whatever fits your profile. Okay, so now that we've gone through all that, let's get into the powers that we or I use that fits my profile. And I just enjoy using so much that I don't really need to play anything else. So we're going to start with the at wills. So disheartening strike is your most important at will, though it's not your primary. It's not the one that you're going to spam when you're in between rotations to try and get damage on the boss. But it does generate a lot of AP, and it also debuffs the boss. So it also is very important to use, even though you're not overly spamming it. The primary at will is going to be Shuriken Toss or Cloud of Steel. Again, because I'm a ranged rogue and I don't care about proximity, Shirk or Sky Flourish is garbage. Doesn't matter if it's good or bad, it doesn't fit my profile. Either Cloud of Steel or Shuriken Toss is fine. I haven't really noticed massive differences in DPS using one or the other. But granted, I haven't used Cloud of Steel in quite some time, so it could be that it's improved, but I just can't stand its noise. And I know that's a stupid reason not to use it, but end of day, I don't find it to be so much better than Shuriken Toss, and I don't really spam my primary at will all that much anyways, because I have good recharge speed and lots of tricks I use to bring my cooldowns down. So the vast majority of time, I'm getting my DPS out of my encounters. Okay, so now we're going to go on to my encounters. And two of them I consider to be mandatory. If you're not using these two encounters, frankly, in my mind, you're not a real Whisperknife. You're just probably an assassin wannabe who's taking advantage of Whisperknife's upgrades. And then the third encounter is entirely whatever you want, whatever fits your profile, whatever you want to use. So the mandatory encounters are Shadow Strike and Vengeance Pursuit. My third choice, again, to fit my profile, it needs to be ranged, and I use Blitz. I understand that there's a lot of people out there who are going to be cringing on that and not agree with me, and that's okay. That's your right. If you want to use Lashing Blade because your primary is single target guy, that's up to you. I mean, some of these other stuff, I haven't used in so long. I don't know how effective they are. Not a big fan of Shadowy Disappearance. Impact Shot, I'm not a big fan of. Again, close to proximity. Bait and Switch could have its uses somewhere. I don't think anyone ever uses that. Smoke Bomb, of course, is a very popular overblown skill that a lot of the quote unquote better DPS use because it is so overblown, but it's too boring a skill for me and I'm just not interested. And then there's, of course, proximity, which is another issue. Passive Blades had its day. I don't think it's all that great anymore. I don't know. I haven't used it in a while, and I'm not the guy to comment about Passive Blades. And then Blade Fury, I don't really find that to be all that useful either. So at the end of the day, just by elimination, fitting my profile and the skills that are actually useful, we go with Shadow Strike, Vengeance Pursuit, and Blitz. Again, to me, these two, Shadow Strike and Vengeance Pursuit, every Whisperknife should be using all the time. I understand if you're an AoE build that you're not going to use these two and that you're going to probably go Path of Blades, Smoke Bomb, and maybe Blitz. I don't know what your third would be in that case. And that's okay with you. But for someone like myself who's either ST or ST hybrid, you really need to use Shadow Strike and Vengeance Pursuit. Okay, so now for dailies, this is pretty simple. As a single target hybrid rogue, the only one to ever use is Hateful Knives. I do equip Killing Storm because occasionally when I'm questing or maybe I'm in Hell Pit or something and I get bombarded by a bunch of mobs, Killing Storm has its uses at that point. But if we're talking about running dungeons and typical use, Hateful Knives is the only one that you're ever going to need. Okay, so now we're into class features. And for the most part, this is very personal, and you're going to pick whatever suits your profile. There's a lot of choices, and they each have their own uses. But for someone like myself who doesn't want to be swapping loadouts and changing powers all the time, the best two to use are advantageous position and tenacious concealment. Advantageous position, and everyone should be using. Anytime you can have combat advantage and not be in stealth, that's a good thing. Tenacious concealment, I do highly recommend because as a Whisperknife, our goal is to be in stealth as much as we can. And when we're not in stealth, we want to get back into stealth as fast as we can, not only because that increases our damage, but because it generates another SOD. So the more SODs you can generate, the better your damage. So that's why I use this particular one. And then in comparison to using the other ones, the Talisman of Shadow, I don't really find to be all that useful. This one here, Razor Action, I'm pretty sure that's part of the Shadow pack, and that a lot of guys are going to use that. But since I don't play that way and I don't use the hack, I don't use this one. Dagger Threat has its moments. Maybe on a single target boss, you might think about it, but then you're going to lose out on a lot of entering and exiting stealths. So you got to decide for yourself which one works. Tactics, I don't find generates AP all that much faster. I've tried using it because hey, if I can generate 2 or 3 dailies before we ever get into an arty call, that would be awesome. But it doesn't do that. It doesn't generate that much more AP. And these last two, these are from basically movement speed ones. So they're for pain chart chasers that want to run ahead of everybody and kill everything. And that's not really my profile. And lastly, we're going to get into our feats and which feats I choose. Again, for my profile, I'm a single target. I understand if you're using an AoE build that you're going to use entirely different feats. I understand, for example, that Shadow Op is the thing to do if you want to be super AoE. It's not my thing. And we're just going to go over why I picked the feats that I pick. So I pick Shady Prep because I'm for anything that reduces my cooldowns. And I do get a damage buff later on with Ambusher's Haste. So this isn't necessarily as important to me as being able to regenerate my encounters and more SODs. These two are all about stealth regen. I've used Dark Reimbursement in the past, and it's also very potent. And if it works for you, you can use that one for sure. It's not that it's absolutely you must use hidden attacks, but I find hidden attacks is working better for me than Dark Reimbursement. It may not be the same for you. Return to Shadows, again, is about stealth regeneration. Pretty sure One with Shadows is more of an AoE power, but I don't even use it, so I don't care. I mean, again, stealth regen. SOD is the only skill you're ever going to use in a single target situation. Doesn't matter how potent this thing is with the hacks and all that stuff. If you're a single target, this is the skill to use. And we'll get into showing how to use SOD when we get into the combat part of this tutorial. And Ambusher's Haste. That's where I get a lot of extended damage. And it's definitely superior to Gutter Porn, even though I am a ranged rogue. 40% is better than 10%. And whenever I'm in stealth, which is all the time, is better than for 5 seconds. So, okay, now we're done looking at the feats and powers and skills and things. We're going to enter the arena and we're going to learn a few things. The first thing that I absolutely need to show is I need to show Vengeance Pursuit because too many of you don't use it and think it's some crappy power. But the reality is, it's your second most potent power with one of your shortest CD downtimes. And there's absolutely no reason why you shouldn't use it, except for the fact that you just physically can't because you're not a good enough player. I realize there are other easy, overblown powers that you can use and make your DPS great, but at the same time, that's not Whisperknife in my world. So let's show you Vengeance Pursuit. Let's prove that it's not as slow as you want to make it out to be in the context of a simple hit. This isn't a full rotation. We're just going to show it very basically. We're going to pop a boss. We're going to do a disheartening strike. We're going to go stealth, VP1, VP2. Done. Now, was that slow to you? Because it wasn't slow to me. Now, granted, this is not how you use it in a full rotation, but the point I'm trying to make is it's not slow. And anyone who says that is an idiot. All right, so the second thing I want to show is why I like Blitz. Make sure I have Blitz. Yes, okay. So again, I like to be ranged, and I don't want to use any powers that require me getting close to the boss. So I'm obviously limited with what my powers can be. Blitz is one of them. Now, but this is the real thing. So let's use equal buffing. My stats, all that stuff is unbuffed. I'm completely naked, and we're just going to use equal rotational balance, and we're going to see what kind of damage. So we're going to do a disheartening, we're going to go stealth, and we're going to do a blitz. 468. Not bad. Of course, we're going to now do a lashing blade, and of course it's going to be stronger. There's no question. I'm not an idiot here. I understand it's a stronger skill overall. If you hit, let's just make that a clear statement. If you hit. So now we're going to do equal application here. We're going to do disheartening strike, stealth. I got to get close, and I'm going to hit him. That was 597, but that was uncritted. Try again. Disheartening strike, stealth. Waste my time getting close and hit. That was 820. Think you can do better than that. I'll do it one more time just for fun. Oh, I missed. Yay. What a great skill you guys are using here. You can't even hit the boss. Here we go. Oh, missed again. Here we go. 1.13. So yes, we did a little bit better. Oops. So I did about 500K with Blitz, and I did about 1 million with Lashing. Now, of course, Lashing is stronger. But what Lashing doesn't offer is range and the ability to reduce my CDs, which increase your damage by alternative methods. It's not always which power is the most potent and therefore most DPS. DPS can be created by potent powers, but it can also be created by cycling your encounters faster and doing more rotations. So there's more than one way to increase your DPS. And when you factor that in to the fact that the lashing was only, what, 500,000 more than the Blitz, I'll take the Blitz. It's a lot more fun a skill as well, and allows me to stick with my profile of being ranged. Okay, so the next thing I want to do is explain Shadow of Demise, which is the most important part of playing Whisperknife. Now, the basics is pretty easy when you read the description here. Let me get into the powers. So the basics is when you're in stealth, your first encounter powder will trigger a Shadow of Demise effect, which lasts for 5 seconds. All the damage you do will be added, and after 5 seconds, 50% of that damage will be reapplied to the boss. So ultimately, You want to remain in stealth as long as you can because you want to take advantage of Ambusher's haste and use and apply as much damage as you can over that 5-second window. So one of the advantages of having Vengeance Pursuit is VP1 does not exit stealth. The same thing with Shadow Strike, does not exit stealth. So when you first apply your Shadow Demise, the first one you want to use is VP1 and then Shadow Strike. Not only does it not exit stealth, but Shadow Strike adds a debuff and increases your stealth bar back up. So Ambusher's Haste gets the best you can out of your next hits. So we're just going to apply those two very basic skills. We're not going to get into anything more complicated, just to show a point. So we're going to do a Disheartening Strike, Enter Stealth, VP1, and then we're going to do a Shadow Strike. And we're just going to wait. And Shadow Demise did 577k. Obviously, that's not that strong, but we're nowhere near complete doing a full rotation. That's just proving a point that you hit the first skill in stealth to trigger your 5-second window, and then any other skill you apply will add to the overall damage output 5 seconds later. And in an ideal situation, you do not want to use a skill like Lashing Blade early on in your rotation because it'll take you out of stealth. And you do not want to be out of stealth when you're doing your SOD as much as possible. So now the next thing we're going to do is we're going to apply SOD and we're going to add a few more hits. And we're going to show that they're all still in stealth, including your daily and your artifact. Because I don't use an ambusher's or a lashing blade, or I don't put my blitz early. Any skill that will take me out of stealth is not to be used early on in your rotation of an SOD. So we're going to do a lot more potent one. Now keep in mind that I'm naked on my buffs. If you look at my stats here, this is my naked stat buffs. You'll see my combat advantages and all that impressive as a naked stat. I mean, when I add all my buffs and stuff, it's 90%, but as we're standing now, don't expect miracles as a completely unbuffed output. Just because my total output may not be what yours is if it's fully buffed. Remember, this is just a tutorial to show stuff. I'm not trying to impress you with my output damage at this point. We're just trying to show how to make the skill work. So we're going to apply Vengeance Pursuit 1, Shadow Strike. We're going to apply Marcos and Hateful Knives, and we're going to apply Big Beast. We're going to get all that in a 5-second window, and we're going to see what kind of output. The first thing you do is Disheartening Strike, Stealth, VP1, Shadow Strike, Marcos, Daily, and Big Beat. And I did 3.2 million for my Shadow of Demise, and we can go into the log and verify that. Yep, 3.2 million. So that is basically how Shadow of Demise works, is it just takes all your 5-second damage and adds it up and adds 50% to your target. And it's extremely potent, especially when you get into debuffs and you fully buff up and you add, like if you get a group of 10 and you're throwing all these debuffs on the boss and then you buff yourself up 90 90 90 and you apply that, just that rotation right there in a 5-second window, you're going to do some serious damage. I didn't have the time to apply a VP2 or a blitz on that particular rotation, but if you can nail everything really, really quick, you will be able to get a VP2 as well. But chances are you're not going to get your third encounter anyways in an SOD. If you can do it, thumbs up to you. If you can get all those artifacts, mount powers, all those encounters in one SOD window, you're the man. Now, most SOD windows, you're not going to be doing full artifact calls. So most of the time, you're going to be applying just your encounters, maybe even one or two, depending on how many CDs are not up yet. And you generate an SOD initial hit pretty quick, and then two of your encounters are still on CD, so you just use what you can. And ideally, for certain bosses, you're not necessarily going to apply your dailies and your arties if you're waiting on an arty call. But if that's not an issue, you will try and get as much damage as you can in that 5 second window. And that's how it works. And so now you've seen a basic rotation and mostly all the skills that you use. I pretty much have nothing else that I can add. If you're here basically because you want to see what gear I wear or what comp slots I use or any of that stuff, that's not why I'm here. That stuff is, well, not unimportant, but it's not as important as some of these guys want to make you believe that, oh, you can only DPS if you wear this ring set and this gear set and this chest and this hat, and if you try and wear anything else, you just no good. Like, it doesn't work that way. The bottom line is get your stats to 90%. It doesn't matter how you do it. Add some damage buffs one way or another, whether you want to do it from rings, whether you want to do it in comp slots, whether you can do it in some of your gear. The bottom line is there's more than one way to stat your gear, and seeing my stats and my gears is not really important. If you want to really get the best out of your class, you just have to learn how to play it, and you'll do better than half the people that have quote unquote better gear than you. That's just as simple as that. And that concludes my first podcast, and I hope it was informative and that anyone who wanted to learn a little bit about Whisperknife has learned something. And if you have any suggestions that you want to provide me, feel free to throw them in the comments. And don't forget to give me a thumbs up. And if you want to subscribe, I won't object.